Welcome back. This is Inspired Afternoons, and I have our Ustad, Sister Sauda Asmal, on the line. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Sauda.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sister Maryam.
Shukran, as always, for giving of your time and your resources to educate us and for me to transport me and let me transcend to a different time, era, and place, the most beautiful, wonderful time. And today we're speaking about a Sahabiyat, a very famous personality indeed as well. And this is Maariyah Al Qibtiyyah, who was actually gifted to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, as well as she gave him the honor in bore him a baby son who sadly had passed away in his infancy, but no less an amazing Sahabiyat, and also somebody that came to Arabia from a very, very, in fact, from a different continent. So Medina and the Arabian Peninsula were actually foreign to her. So she was, last time we were speaking about our beloved mother, Juwairiya radiallahu anha and Safiya radiallahu anha, but they were in the peninsula from different tribes or maybe in a slightly different locality. But Maariyah Qibtiyyah hails from a totally different landscape and geographic location from the Arabian Peninsula.
That's right.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. You can go ahead.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Maariyah bin Sham'un Al Qibtiyyah was a concubine of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and I know many years ago it would have been a norm, morally permissible back then to take what we would call in Arabic milk yamin or wama malakat aymanukum, in addition to wives, right, or a wife. So, we choose the word, even though it appears archaic in our day, but the Bible has mentioned Ibraheem, David, Solomon, all biblical prophets, like Dawood, when the Bible mentioned David having 700 and Solomon over 1,000. Our Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had one wife for 25 years, and then after the death only of Khadija did he marry more than one wife. So the similarity between Maariyah and Hajar was that they were both Coptic, and Hajar meaning the wife of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's ancestor, that is Nabi Ibraheem alayhi salam. And Hajar was a gift from Sarah, and she got Hajar from a king. And then Sarah then presented her to Ibrahim alayhi salam. So similarly, Maariyah, the Copt, because she was Coptic, right? Or Qibt was the place. And Qibtiyyah, a female who comes from this place, right, in Arabic, was gifted to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam by Shurayh ibn Mina. And that was his Arab name, or as the Arabs knew him, as the patriarch of Egypt, the Makokos of Alexandria. So Makokos wasn't his name, that was the title for the patriarch. He was also known as Cyrus, right? Cyrus of Alexandria. And so this patriarch of Egypt, or Egypt at that time was under Byzantine rule, so that was Roman. It was part of the Roman Empire, Egypt at the time. So Cyrus, or Makokos, as he's known in Sirah, was a learned Malachite Christian. There's many other sects at the time. This is before Roman Catholic and Protestant. And so Malachite Christian is similar to Greek Orthodox. And he was a ruler or a leader rather, who combined both religious and political authority over his people. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam sent him a letter inviting him to Islam in 6 after Hijrah, as he did with others, and writing back to him, say, oh, this is part of the letter. O people of the scripture, come to a word that is equitable between us and you, that we will not worship except Allah and not associate anything with Him, and not take one another as lords instead of Allah, or except Allah. But if they turn away, then say, bear witness that we are Muslims submitting to Him. And the Nabi's letters inviting the kings and princes and rulers to follow Islam were all concluded with this statement: if you turn away, you will bear the sin of your followers. So meaning you will bear, for Muqawqis it was, if you turn away, you will bear the sin of the people of Qibt. And Muqawqis he was kind. He did not respond with hostility like some of the other rulers. He put the letter in a box made of ivory and sealed it and called somebody who could write Arabic from among his people and responded to Nabi Sallallahu letter. And so you remember that Copt is not even, like you said, in the same. They're not there in Africa, and Saudi is in another peninsula. So another area. So they were not Arabic-speaking people. Maariyah was not Arabic-speaking, right? And there's a Christian. So he wrote to Muhammad bin Abdullah from Muqawqis, the chief of Qibt, peace be to you. I have read your letter and I have noted the content. I knew this much, that a prophet was to come, but I had expected him to appear in Syria. I have extended honorable welcome to your messenger, and the messenger here was Hatib bin Abi Balta, he was the envoy, and I'm sending 2 girls, and in the letter it's the word Jariyatun is mentioned, who are highly respected among the Qibtis, or the Egyptians, the Copts. And I offer as a present some cloth and a mule to ride on. And this is recorded in Sirat al-Nabi, right? Muqawqis didn't accept Islam, although he described to Hatib certain features, and he was kind to send these gifts to Nabi Sallallahu. So he sent 1,000 misqal, that's satchels of gold, that's a lot, 20 robes of fine cloth, a mule and a donkey, right, named Todo, a servant, and the servant's name was Ma'bur, who was a eunuch, which means that he was, when they, as you will see later, that they were sent to the service of the church, right? Ma'bur was the paternal cousin of these girls. So the 2 girls that he sent was Maariyah and Sireen, and Ma'bur was a paternal cousin of the girls, and they were gifted by their families to the church, and then in turn was gifted to Nabi Sallallahu by Muqawqis. So she was a Copt, Maariyah, right? We know that from her name. Qibt was in Upper Egypt. So they say her father was Coptic and her mother was Greek. In other narrations, they say Roman, but many say that is a weak narration. So it's accepted that they say she was born in Upper Egypt from a Coptic father and Greek mother, and then moved to the court of Muqawqis when she was very young. So these sisters were given in his service. So it looks like her family were very devout Christians. And she arrived in Medina in Muharram to join the household of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam just after the treaty with the Quraysh that was done at Hudaybiyah. And we spoke about this in the past, as we go on with the wives. It is not known when she accepted Islam, like the exact date. But they say on the way to Medina, Hatib Radwan was explaining to her and her sister about Islam. So there's no specific date of her acceptance, but Ibn Kathir suggested that Maariyah accepted Islam only after her arrival in Medina. And Allah knows best. The sisters accepted Islam, though, before Ma'bur did. He did accept, but not as early as they did. Nabi Sallallahu then gifted Sirin, that's her sister, to Hassan bin Thabit when he kept Maariyah. And the sisters, we said initially, were Christian and accepted Islam. And Sirin and Hassan Ridwanu later had a son named Abdurrahman bin Thabit. So in reports given, some reports say that she was of royal descent. So Abu Nu'aym mentions, and this is recorded in Sirat al-Nabawiyah, that a ruler of the Byzantine patriarchs called Muqawqis presented a Coptic girl of royal descent named Maariyah, along with a young male cousin of hers. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam went in to see her, and he would go into his private room and obviously have relations with her. This is what they recorded and how they knew Maariyah. So there is difference of opinion of royal. There are narrations that believe that she wasn't royal, but more that she served the royalty, that is the patriarch, right? She was known to be exceedingly beautiful. and obviously she looked different to what the Arab woman looked like. And obviously this would make her stand out. She was quiet, she was kind-hearted, they said she was charitable as well, and she was very loyal to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So imagine this woman coming to Medina, right? Her life she's been known to serve, right? And then she's gifted to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and again, not forced into accepting Islam. So how much must she have loved Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and to accept? Because there were slaves, right, or concubines as well, right, who, like Rehana bin Zayd, she didn't want to initially accept. They were not forced to say, okay, you have to accept. Different with a wife. So her status in Islam, according to Ibraheem, and this is where the difference of opinion is, right? So Ibn Taym said, Abu Ubaidah said that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had 4 concubines, Maariyah, and Maariyah was special because her status was raised after the birth of her son Ibrahim. So she was one. Rehana bin Shim'un was the other one. Others say bin Zayd, others say Shim'un. She was also acquired as a prisoner of war. In fact, she was acquired just like Safiya, and but she was Bani Qurayza, and a slave woman who was given to him by Zainab bin Jahash, right? But there's not much on this in history. But with Maariyah, I think there's the most on it because she bore Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So Maariyah was not just one of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's concubines, but she's regarded as Walad. So Walad means the mother of his son. And majority of the ulama regard her as just Walad. She's not regarded as Ummahatul Mu'mineen, who are the wives of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, where he had taken them in nikah, and she was gifted to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? The stated hadith is mentioned by our Nabi's words. When he narrates the hadith to that Abu Dharr Ghifari narrates, when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used the words blood ties or relationship of marriage. This shows that Maariyah was not wed as Safiya or Juwaira, right, for example. So she holds a high status bound to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam by blood ties, and that's what his own words. Because the hadith of Abu Dharr reported Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam saying, he would soon conquer Egypt, and that is a land which is known as land of Kirat. So when you conquer it, treat its inhabitants well. So there lies upon you the responsibility because of blood ties or relationship of marriage with them. And this was, he was meaning Maariyah. And when you see 2 persons falling into dispute among themselves for the space of a brick, then get out of there. This is recorded in Muslim. So Ibn Sa'd mentioned that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam lodged her, or he kept her, that is Maariyah, and her sister was Sulaim in Milhan. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam went to them and he told them about Islam. And eventually, after they accepted, he had moved them to his property. In others say it's called Aliya, others say Awali. And she became a good Muslim. This is written in the Tabaqat. According to some narrations, she was lodged near the house where Safiya had initially lived before. And this area, Awali or Aliya, is also the vicinity where Ali lived. So the fact that she was moved to the Nabi's personal property means that she was treated well and he loved her. She was never treated badly or just used as a slave, as some Orientalists would believe. In fact, slaves, even in Islam at that time, were not treated like slaves in America were treated, or even in South Africa in the 1800s, or anywhere in the world where there was slavery. Nowhere did Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam ever catch free people and sell them. He advised the freeing of slaves. And if we look at the Mamluk dynasty in the history of Islam, these are slaves who later became rulers in Islam. So slavery was a norm at that time. It is, however, not a norm in today's time. So obviously slavery is not acceptable in Islam. But I'm not going to digress about this. We speak about Maariyah rather. So we know that she was gifted to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam from Cyrus or Muqawqis. She was not captured in warfare as Juwaira bint al-Harith or Safiya bint Huyay. And so some ulama who view Maariyah to be a wife of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, they view her as a wife because, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam ordered her to be veiled. And we said before, with Safiya, with Juwayriya, they were veiled, and people thought, now, if she's veiled, then we know she's not a concubine, we know she's not a slave. But here, she was, and yet Nabi Sallallahu told her to veil herself, right? In the letter that Muqawqis wrote, he did not use the word amat or slave. And I know I'm being technical, but I'm explaining to you that she is not regarded as the wife, but she has a high status. So even the word jariyatun, meaning young girl, they would sometimes interchangeably use this word as, a young slave girl. Maariyah did not live in the proximity of Masjid al-Nabawi. She lived in this place called the Orchard of Ibraheem, or Mashrabat Ibraheem as it was known. This is about 3 kilometers from Masjid Nabawi. So all the wives lived in the vicinity of Masjid Nabawi, right? By giving birth to a child, right, from Nabi Sallallahu, the status of Maariyah was raised in the eyes of the Nabi in Islam, the Muslims. And so even though she was not Ummahatul Mu'mineen, he viewed her as he would his wife, which means she enjoyed a favored position, right? So although she enjoyed special favor with Nabi Sallallahu, the only thing was she was not formally a wife of Nabi Sallallahu, right? So it was either Jamadul Ula or Akhir, but in 9AH, and there's difference of opinion in the dates. This is the same year that Nabi Sallallahu daughter Zainab Radhiyallahu anha passed away. Maariyah gave birth to a beautiful baby boy, and they named him Ibraheem. Nabi Sallallahu named him Ibraheem. Nabi Sallallahu said, her child has freed her. Her statement in Hadith, her child has freed her, meaning that now from concubine status or Milk Yamin status, she gives birth, she is now regarded as Walad. This is what she's now called. In Islamic fiqh terms, what does this mean? It means that the child is fully legitimate. It's not a slave. It takes the status of its father. The mother is no longer regarded as a slave or a concubine. She cannot be sold or transferred. And even if her owner doesn't free her, she'll automatically be free when he passes away. So this city ruling of Walad was given by Nabi Sallallahu himself because of Maariyah Radhiyallahu anha. So that is a big thing in our Sharia, right? So now, being Walad, she was deemed unlawful for men after his death, and she would be free, right? They also underlined that Nabi Sallallahu still had conjugal relationship with her after the birth of Ibrahim alayhi salam. She was not sold, she was not offered as a gift to somebody else after his death. And we said also that he loved her as a wife, right? Many of the Ansar ladies volunteered to be the wet nurse of Ibrahim. However, this honor was given to Burda, Khawla bint al-Munzir, and she was from the Banu Adi of the Najjar tribe. She would be his foster mother. And her husband, the foster father of Ibrahim, was known as Abu Saif al-Bara bin Aus, who was a blacksmith by trade. Nabi Sallallahu would often go to the Banu Najjar plain to see his son. And it is also noted that he paid Burda for being the wet nurse of Ibrahim. So unfortunately, some narrations say 16 months, some narrations say 18 months, but little Ibrahim became ill. And so the news reached Nabi Sallallahu that his son was extremely ill. And so he visited the little one with some of the Sahaba at the time, and the baby was coughing and wheezing. And Nabi Sallallahu knew that now this is the last moments that he'll have with his baby. And he began to cry. And when Sahaba saw Nabi Sallallahu crying at this, they asked, Abdurrahman bin Auf asked, do you cry as well? And you, O Prophet of Allah? And even though he knew that his son would go to Jannah, I mean, he's Masoom, he's months, he couldn't help but shed tears. Anas bin Malik narrated that we went with Allah's messenger to the blacksmith Abu Saif, and he was the husband of the wet nurse of Ibrahim. And Allah's messenger ﷺ took Ibrahim and he kissed him and smelled him. And later we entered Abu Saif's house, and at the time Ibrahim was in his last breath. And the eyes of Allah's messenger started shedding tears. Abdurrahman bin Auf said, "O Allah's Apostle, even you are weeping?" He said, "O Ibn Auf, this is mercy." And then he wept more and said, "The eyes are shedding tears and the heart is grieved, but we will not say except what pleases our Lord. O Ibrahim, indeed we are grieved by separation." This shows the love and affection that our Nabi had for his son. And all fathers should emulate this. We know that Nabi Faisal is known to show affection in his life with his children and grandchildren. And we know displaying affection to a child not only has great positive effects on the emotional growth of a child, but Nabi Faisal was showing affection and even now when and sadness rather, even now when his baby was passing away. And this was in a time when majority of the Arabs were harsh. Here comes our perfect example, al-Uswatun Hasana, to lead by example. And that example was a life replete with difficulty and tests and challenges. And Sahaba were surprised at his crying because this was due to the misconception that crying over the dead was a show of impatience, on the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That you would cry when somebody passed away due to not being happy with Allah's decree. But this was not the case. And Sahaba misunderstood this. And this is also because of the fear of Allah that they had. And then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam went on to explain that you were shedding tears, in fact, it wasn't a show of impatience. It wasn't that he was unhappy with Allah's decree. It is the natural softening of the heart upon the loss of someone. So again, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam teaching his Sahaba, even at this time of grief, that there's no need to be hard in religion. Cry. It doesn't mean that you're not happy with the will of Allah. It's a normal response to cry because you're sad. So this narration of regarding Abdurrahman bin Auf, surprised at Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's crying, is actually an indication that, you are allowed to show sorrow and cry without causing the displeasure of Allah. Anyway, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told Maariyah and Shireen, who are now crying at the loss of their baby, that Ibrahim would have his own nurse in Jannah. He consoled Maariyah by telling her. And different accounts relate that the ghusl for Ibrahim was performed by either Burda or Fadl bin Abbas. And then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam carried this little body to the cemetery of Baqi and led the janazah salah. And you can imagine his grief. He filled the grave with sand, sprinkled some water on it, and just cried. Imagine having lost all of his children but Fatima at this age. Nabi Fatima was around the age of 62 and still burying his loved one. Ibn Kathir mentions in his book that when Ibrahim passed away, it was the same day, right after his death, that there was an eclipse of the sun. And so people at the time started saying, that it's connected to the death of Nabi Fatim's son. Nabi Fatima clarified this, saying that the sun and moon are two of Allah's signs. He said they're not eclipsed because of anyone's birth or death. When you see these signs, make haste to remember Allah in prayer. So, even after this, it was again another sign for kuffar to taunt Nabi Fatima, but Allah had still allowed Nabi Fatima's descendants through Fatima to continue. So Maariyah was very upset and she cried a lot. She was not a person who was going to. She was quiet to begin with, but even after this, she didn't go out much. So after the death of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, in fact, she spent 3 years only, right? So you can see from Safiya, Maimuna, they didn't spend more than 3 years with Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? Those wives were quick. And after the death of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Ibn Sa'd mentioned that she was commanded to observe her iddah, right? And there was not much for her to live for. After she'd lost the two most important people in her life, because it wasn't long after the death of Ibrahim that Nabi Fatima also passed away. And she knew no one. It was a strange place. And she just kept to herself. She bound herself to the four walls of the house. She remained a recluse for the next 5 years. They say she never ever went out except to visit the grave of Nabi Fatima or son Ibrahim. And 5 years later, and I mean, she was young. She would probably, the oldest she would have been was in early 30s, or younger even. She passed away in those 5 years, in 16 age, in Muharram. Umar radiallahu anhu gathered the people himself to attend her janazah, and he led the janazah over her. And she is also buried in Baqi. So, other than this, there is not much that is known about Maariyah. We do know, however, that despite her being so quiet, and she was not a person who was, very dynamic or out there. She was quiet and she was very beautiful. So we know that she was. There was a lot of jealousy. Aisha and Hafsa knew that she was beautiful, and they also knew that Nabi Sallallahu loved her. But she was never a person to, retaliate. Or she was quiet, and I suppose also not being Arab, she also probably felt a little bit out of place.
Sister Sauda, shukran for that beautiful narration and also giving us in an insight in a glimpse. Yes, we all know of Sahabia Maariyah Qibtiyyah because that she was the mother, like you say, Walad, the mother of Ibraheem.
Yeah.
But you've given us quite a beautiful seerah into her early life and how it came to be that she entered Medina, and along with Nabi, she became part of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's household, and that, and like you say, important injunctions once again in what you say, the what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam referred to her, what confirmed conferred the title for Walad, which then immediately changed her status and gave her that honor.
Yes.
As in we say independent, free woman. So thereafter, she could be free. But like you say, she kept to herself. She was unassuming. She experienced a heartache in her life, both through the loss of two beloveds, her beloved. Her beloved Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, as well as her beloved child, and must have been difficult. But also here in the seerah, you bring another aspect, the human aspect of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because I think of families, couples who lose children in the infancy, or even those that have children that are born early and they don't survive. Just last week in my locality, sadly, a young toddler had through a drowning incident had passed away. But I think courage to the parents and also solace to the parents that this is something the Nabi of Allah also experienced.
Yes.
And I think for all parents out there who have had a loss of a child in infancy, or even through premature birth in labor, and have lost a child, please understand this is also part of the footsteps and the journey of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because Allah's beloved too had experienced this profound, deep loss. And as you said, encouragement was given. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave comfort to say there'll be a wet nurse looking after the children in Jannah. So no, the inhabitants and the residents of Jannah will be taking care of your children until this beautiful day when they're actually going to be the callers for you to enter Jannah. So your entry into Jannah will be through them. So Jazakallah for the story, because I felt it was important, because it gives comfort and solace for all those who have lost children or had to have the difficult task of bearing their children. Shukran as always, Sister Sauda, and may you be under the mercy and protection of the Almighty.
Jazakallah khair, Ameen. Inshallah, we'll speak again.
Ameen. And we're going to go for a short break, and then we're going to be discussing hashtag Matric 2020 rewrite.
Connect